Something has been happening around you, and deep down, you already sensed it wasn't random. A creature appears inside your home at the exact moment your thoughts feel heavy. A moth circling a single light, a lizard staying in one place as if studying you, a bird that somehow finds its way indoors, or even a small creature crossing your path right when your spirit feels unsettled. People around you might label these things as coincidence, nature, or chance, but chosen ones never experience signs the same way the rest of the world does. And here's the part I'm allowed to reveal now, but only in part. When certain creatures appear in your space, it is not always about the creature itself, but about the timing. The rest of this truth, the deeper meaning behind why it happens when it happens, is something I will share later in this message when your spirit is ready for it. You didn't click on this video by accident, you were guided here. Across cultures, scriptures, and spiritual traditions, animals have carried symbolic meaning, especially during seasons of transition, awakening, or inner conflict. And for someone with your sensitivity, your perception, your spiritual depth, these moments often arrive as subtle indicators, messages wrapped in symbols rather than words. Only chosen ones notice these things. Only those who have walked through long waiting seasons, battled unseen pressures, and survived spiritual exhaustion can feel when the atmosphere around them begins to shift. And lately, you felt it intensely. Something around you is different. Something is approaching. Something is aligning. You've walked through battles that left scars no one else sees. You've endured delays that felt unfair, setbacks that made you question your path, and silent seasons where you wondered if your prayers were floating unanswered. Yet through all of it, something within you kept paying attention to patterns, to signs, to small but meaningful disruptions. These indoor creature encounters often show up during spiritual thresholds, moments where your life is turning, even if you can't articulate the direction yet. They come in moments of internal wrestling, emotional heaviness, spiritual anticipation, or deep reflection, and your instinct tells you there is more happening than what meets the eye. Here is what I can tell you now, the half-revelation. These appearances often reflect movement, transition, or emotional spiritual shifts happening within you, not outside of you. They mirror something stirring in your inner world, a breakthrough forming, a cycle closing, a message seeking your attention, a pattern being revealed. But the specific meaning behind each creature, whether it reflects protection, awakening, cleansing, intuition, or inner alignment, depends on more than the creature itself. It depends on when it appears, how it appears, and what your spirit was feeling in that moment. That part, the deeper layer, I will explain before this message ends. For now, just know this: if these creatures have been appearing indoors, it may be a sign that you have entered a spiritual window, a moment where your awareness heightens and your intuition becomes stronger. Not in a supernatural or literal sense, but in the symbolic way your soul interprets life when you are evolving. When destiny quietly shifts, your perception often sharpens before the change becomes visible. That sharpening is what you've been feeling. If this resonates in your spirit, comment 777 below as an act of alignment, a symbolic gesture of openness to understanding what your inner world has been trying to tell you. Like this video, share it with another sensitive soul, and subscribe as a declaration that you're ready for deeper insight. Stay with me until the end, because the full meaning, the part heaven has allowed me to reveal today, is coming next. And once you hear it, you will never interpret these moments the same way again. God's chosen ones. If these creatures appear indoors, destiny is moving. And tonight, chosen one, something sacred is being revealed to you. Something subtle yet powerful, the kind of message that does not speak to the eyes but to the soul. When a bat enters a house, most people panic. They feel fear rising in their chest. They think of bad omens and chaos, and they misinterpret the moment as something dark. But the spiritual world does not speak through fear. It speaks through symbols. Divine communication has always been threaded through imagery, timing, and the quiet language of the unseen. And for the chosen ones, a bat is not a threat, it is a revelation. A bat only appears when a cycle in your life is ending, even if you haven't yet realized what part of you is dissolving. It shows up when something inside you is nearing completion, not physically, but spiritually. Old identity, old wounds, old attachments to versions of yourself that cannot accompany you into the next season. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven, and the bat is heaven's gentle way of telling you that one of those seasons is closing. Think for a moment about the nature of a bat. It is a creature of the night, but it is not lost in the darkness. It navigates through total obscurity and still knows exactly where it is going. It moves with precision at a time when the world appears silent and frightening. That alone is a spiritual metaphor for your journey. No one sees the battles you fight inwardly. No one hears your silent heartbreaks, your buried prayers, your unseen resilience. Yet somehow you keep moving. And not just moving, but moving with direction your logic could never explain. And perhaps you've quietly wondered, how have I survived storms that would have broken others who never carried my calling? That is the bat's energy. That is the symbolism heaven uses when speaking to you. A bat entering your home is not a call to fear. It is an invitation to prepare for transformation. Something is exiting your story, so something greater can take its place. It may be a relationship that has drained your soul long enough, a job where your spirit has been shrinking, a silence ordered by God to redirect your path, or an inner identity you've been outgrowing slowly but consistently. Isaiah 43:19 says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?" The bat appears when God begins that unseen work of rebirth, long before you recognize the shift. And here is something even more profound. Bats are not blind. They rely on echolocation, sending a sound into the darkness that returns to them with information about their surroundings. Spiritually, this mirrors your own journey. When a bat shows up, it is a sign that your prayers, your cries, your aching questions are finally returning with answers. Answers you may not have recognized yet, because heaven does not always respond in the language you expect. But the response is there. It has already been sent back to you. Psalm 34:15 says, "The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry," and the bat is a symbol that those cries have not been ignored. A bat enters a home when the soul is transitioning from who it used to be into who it was created to become. That is why this sign rarely appears in peaceful, easy seasons. It shows up during quiet heartbreaks, subtle endings, spiritual awakenings, and the strange heaviness that settles before a major rebirth. You may not see the light yet, but the light sees you. And your transformation, whether you feel ready or not, has already started. In those moments, you may find yourself asking, "What is God preparing me for that I cannot yet name, but my soul already feels approaching?" This is where the artistic world mirrors the spiritual one. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote that the future enters into us long before it happens, so that we can try to live it as if it were already there. In the same way, the bat appears as a messenger of the future, a signal that destiny is already entering your life, weaving itself silently into the corners of your existence before you can fully name it. And in classical music, Gustav Mahler's symphonies often use a single haunting note to foreshadow an emotional shift long before the audience realizes it. The bat carries that same subtle foreshadowing in the spiritual world. Even science echoes the message. In quantum physics, particles behave differently when observed, moving towards states of probability and transition. The bat's appearance symbolizes that your life is in that same state of spiritual transition, your identity shifting, your energy elevating, your destiny rearranging itself to make room for what God has prepared. If you pause for a moment, you might sense a question rising in you. Why does transformation often begin in the dark, long before light appears? These questions are not fears, they are invitations. The chosen ones always encounter them at the threshold of destiny, and without realizing it, you are standing at such a threshold now. Here is the deepest meaning of all. The darkness you are facing is not punishment, it is a passage. It is a tunnel, and tunnels only exist because there is light waiting at the other end. Psalm 139:12 says, "Even the darkness will not be dark to you," reminding you that God does his greatest work in the hidden places. So, if a bat has appeared in your home, pay attention with spiritual eyes. Something is leaving your life, something heavy, something old, something you have outgrown, something God is removing gently but firmly, and something is arriving, something larger, brighter, more aligned with your calling, more connected to your destiny. Your spirit is being pushed into a new chapter, whether you feel prepared or not. Because when destiny decides to move, comfort is no longer an option. Let your heart rest in this truth. You are not standing in the darkness, you are standing in the doorway of your becoming. And tonight, chosen one, something sacred is being revealed to you, something subtle yet powerful, the kind of message that does not speak to the eyes but to the soul. When a bat enters a house, most people panic. They feel fear rising in their chest. They think of bad omens and chaos, and they misinterpret the moment as something dark. But the spiritual world does not speak through fear. It speaks through symbols. Divine communication has always been threaded through imagery, timing, and the quiet language of the unseen. And for the chosen ones, a bat is not a threat. It is a revelation. A bat only appears when a cycle in your life is ending, even if you haven't yet realized what part of you is dissolving. It shows up when something inside you is nearing completion, not physically, but spiritually. Old identity, old wounds, old attachments to versions of yourself that cannot accompany you into the next season. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven, and the bat is heaven's gentle way of telling you that one of those seasons is closing. Think for a moment about the nature of a bat. It is a creature of the night, but it is not lost in the darkness. It navigates through total obscurity and still knows exactly where it is going. It moves with precision at a time when the world appears silent and frightening. That alone is a spiritual metaphor for your journey. No one sees the battles you fight inwardly. No one hears your silent heartbreaks, your buried prayers, your unseen resilience. Yet somehow you keep moving. And not just moving, but moving with direction your logic could never explain. And perhaps you've quietly wondered, how have I survived storms that would have broken others who never carried my calling? That is the bat's energy. That is the symbolism heaven uses when speaking to you. A bat entering your home is not a call to fear. It is an invitation to prepare for transformation. Something is exiting your story, so something greater can take its place. It may be a relationship that has drained your soul long enough, a job where your spirit has been shrinking, a silence ordered by God to redirect your path, or an inner identity you've been outgrowing slowly but consistently. Isaiah 43:19 says, "See, I am doing a new thing, now it springs forth, do you not perceive it?" The bat appears when God begins that unseen work of rebirth, long before you recognize the shift. And here is something even more profound. Bats are not blind. They rely on echolocation, sending a sound into the darkness that returns to them with information about their surroundings. Spiritually, this mirrors your own journey. When a bat shows up, it is a sign that your prayers, your cries, your aching questions are finally returning with answers. Answers you may not have recognized yet, because heaven does not always respond in the language you expect. But the response is there. It has already been sent back to you. Psalm 34:15 says, "The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their cry." and the bat is a symbol that those cries have not been ignored. A bat enters a home when the soul is transitioning from who it used to be into who it was created to become. That is why this sign rarely appears in peaceful, easy seasons. It shows up during quiet heartbreaks, subtle endings, spiritual awakenings, and the strange heaviness that settles before a major rebirth. You may not see the light yet, but the light sees you, and your transformation, whether you feel ready or not, has already started. In those moments, you may find yourself asking, "What is God preparing me for that I cannot yet name, but my soul already feels approaching?" This is where the artistic world mirrors the spiritual one. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote that, "The future enters into us long before it happens, so that we can try to live it as if it were already there." In the same way, the bat appears as a messenger of the future, a signal that destiny is already entering your life, weaving itself silently into the corners of your existence before you can fully name it. And in classical music, Gustav Mahler's symphonies often use a single haunting note to foreshadow an emotional shift long before the audience realizes it. The bat carries that same subtle foreshadowing in the spiritual world. Even science echoes the message. In quantum physics, particles behave differently when observed, moving toward states of probability and transition. The bat's appearance symbolizes that your life is in that same state of spiritual transition, your identity shifting, your energy elevating, your destiny rearranging itself to make room for what God has prepared. If you pause for a moment, you might sense a question rising in you. Why does transformation often begin in the dark, long before light appears? These questions are not fears, they are invitations. The chosen ones always encounter them at the threshold of destiny, and without realizing it, you are standing at such a threshold now. Here is the deepest meaning of all. The darkness you are facing is not punishment, it is a passage. It is a tunnel, and tunnels only exist because there is light waiting at the other end. Psalm 139:12 says, "Even the darkness will not be dark to you," reminding you that God does his greatest work in the hidden places. So, if a bat has appeared in your home, pay attention with spiritual eyes. Something is leaving your life, something heavy, something old, something you have outgrown, something God is removing gently but firmly. And something is arriving, something larger, brighter, more aligned with your calling, more connected to your destiny. Your spirit is being pushed into a new chapter, whether you feel prepared or not. Because when destiny decides to move, comfort is no longer an option. Let your heart rest in this truth. You are not standing in the darkness, you are standing in the doorway of your becoming. Spiritually, chosen one, when the lizard appears indoors, it is never by coincidence. It is guarding a territory, marking a place where your energy requires protection, where your boundaries, seen and unseen, are being reinforced. There are moments in your journey when your external environment mirrors your internal battles, and the lizard shows up precisely in those threshold moments. Sometimes it positions itself near your bedroom, the sanctuary where your spirit lies most vulnerable, where your dreams whisper truths your waking mind is not ready to articulate. That is the sacred chamber where God often reveals hidden warnings, direction, and answers that cannot reach you through ordinary channels. Other times, the lizard stationed itself near your front door, like a small silent warrior declaring, "Nothing enters here without being seen." It becomes a sentinel, a spiritual watchdog of sorts, sensing vibrations and intentions long before your conscious awareness does. Here is the hidden detail most people never realize. Lizards detach their tail to survive attacks. Biologists call this autotomy, a strategic sacrifice. But spiritually, this becomes a powerful symbol of release. It mirrors the same principle found in Philippians 3:13, where Paul speaks of forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. The lizard teaches you the divine art of letting go, of shedding the weights, the memories, the draining connections that once clung to your identity like an extra limb. And here, a question may rise within you almost effortlessly. What am I still holding on to that is costing me more peace than it is worth? Many chosen ones cling, not because the connection is meaningful, but because the loss feels too heavy. Yet, the spiritual message is clear. Release before you are drained into spiritual exhaustion. The lizard does not fear walls, heights, shadows, silence, or places humans consider uncomfortable. It moves confidently in spaces where others lose balance. Its body becomes an architecture of instinct and strategy, knowing precisely when to stay still, when to camouflage, when to advance. This echoes the wisdom of Matthew 10:16. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. The lizard embodies this dual wisdom, harmless in appearance, yet deeply strategic in movement. When this creature appears, it reveals that the environment around you is not as calm as it looks. Something is being exposed. Someone's mask is slipping. Someone's intentions are being monitored by the spiritual realm. The unseen is stirring, and your spirit is being informed before your mind fully understands why. If a lizard has entered your home, or if it keeps appearing in the same place repeatedly, understand this. Your spirit is being defended. Your perception is sharpening. Your discernment is expanding. What was once hidden is now rising to the surface, quietly but unmistakably. Psalm 91:4 says, God will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. And the lizard becomes a symbolic extension of that covering, alert, observant, a creature that sees danger long before danger reveals itself. Sometimes, without realizing it, you might find yourself asking, what truth is already shifting around me that I have not yet fully seen? And that internal question is the evidence that your spiritual senses are awakening in tandem with the sign. But as powerful as the lizard's presence is, there is another creature that arrives with a different assignment altogether: the frog. While the lizard watches in silence, the frog interrupts. It does not hide, it does not camouflage. It appears boldly, often after rainfall, after storms, after a strange heaviness has settled in the air. It emerges precisely when the atmosphere feels spiritually saturated, as if something invisible has been washed clean. The frog is not a guardian of territory, it is a cleanser of the soul. In many ancient cultures, frogs symbolized purification, emotional detox, and spiritual rebirth. The philosopher Plutarch once wrote about creatures that bridge the boundary between water and land, representing the transition between inner emotion and outer manifestation. The frog embodies that symbolism, moving from water, the element of emotion, into territory where those emotions must be processed and understood. Spiritually, the frog arrives during seasons when God is cleansing you inwardly, removing residue from old heartbreaks, old disappointments, and the spiritual toxins left behind by people who mishandled your heart. You may not realize how much heaviness your spirit has been carrying until the frog appears. Its presence becomes a kind of divine echo, reminding you of what needs to be cleansed emotionally. And maybe deep within, you feel another question forming quietly. Is there a wound inside me that I've normalized rather than healed? The frog appears precisely when the answer matters. This creature often emerges after rain, and rain has always been symbolic of spiritual cleansing. Ezekiel 36:25 says, I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. In the same way, the frog shows up when heaven has already begun cleansing you internally, often without your awareness. While the lizard exposes and protects, the frog detoxes and renews. One guards your thresholds, the other purifies your internal landscape. The frog's arrival is not subtle. It is a spiritual interruption, an invitation to confront emotions, memories, or spiritual residue you've been avoiding. It croaks loudly. It draws attention. It does not apologize for its presence, because purification rarely whispers, it announces itself. And yet, there is tenderness in its symbolism. Frogs do not arrive in your home to frighten you. They arrive because the spiritual world is doing a deep cleanse you didn't even know you needed. Psalm 51:10 becomes the heart of its message. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. And here is the deeper truth. The lizard's presence is not small. It is a spiritual manual full of secrets about intuition, hidden enemies, energetic camouflage, and the silent strategies the universe uses to defend the chosen ones. Its lessons are vast, layered, and deserving of an entire message on their own. Tomorrow, we will go deeper into those mysteries, because the lizard watches with a wisdom far beyond its size. But the frog, unlike the lizard, does not watch. It cleanses, it interrupts, it emerges like a herald declaring, something inside you is being washed, restored, renewed. Eze. And as you sit with this message, allow your heart to soften into one final question. What part of me is God asking to release, protect, or cleanse in this season? When the signs appear, they are not random. They are invitations, gentle, symbolic, divine. Let peace settle over you. You are protected, you are cleansed, and you are seen by the one who orchestrates both guardians and messengers. Spiritually, chosen one, timing is everything. Creatures in the natural world often appear in patterns that mirror the unseen movements of your spiritual life, and the frog is perhaps one of the clearest signs of this invisible choreography. Frogs only come where there is water, where flow exists, where emotional currents shift, where something deep within is being stirred. Water has always been the ancient element of emotion, memory, intuition, and cleansing. From the rivers described in Genesis 2 to the baptism waters of the New Testament, water symbolizes purification and rebirth. So, when a frog appears near your home, the universe is not merely observing you, it is washing you. Heaven is tending to your inner life in ways you may have felt but could not articulate. The frog is not a symbol of external cleansing, it is the messenger of internal purification. It shows up when the soul begins releasing emotional toxins that the mind worked hard to suppress. Bitterness that turned silent, anger swallowed down, grief you pushed aside because life demanded strength instead of softness, the heartbreak you never fully admitted to yourself. These are the emotional sediments that settle at the bottom of the spirit, heavy and unmoved until something divine stirs the water. A frog at your doorstep is heaven's sign that something inside you is finally being rinsed away. And perhaps quietly, deep within, the question arises, what pain have I carried so long that I forgot it was even heavy? Think for a moment about the life of a frog. It begins in the water, then rises to land. It survives in two worlds, shifting seamlessly between emotional territory and physical territory. Spiritually, this dual existence symbolizes transition, the alignment of what you feel internally with the reality you begin to live externally. This is why frogs appear during seasons when your emotional life is shifting, evolving, healing. You may be trying to be strong, holding yourself up with sheer willpower, while heaven knows that what you needed wasn't more strength, it was cleansing. Psalm 147:3 says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, and the frog becomes a reminder that this healing often begins before you consciously realize it. Most people overlook this sign. They say it's just a frog. But look deeper, chosen one. Frogs don't show up when everything is stable. They show up when healing has begun. They appear after the storm, not to warn, but to confirm. Something you could not release on your own is being removed from your energetic field. A toxic connection that drained your spirit. A spiritual blockage you've unconsciously carried. A heavy presence that lingered too long. A pain so quiet your own heart learned to whisper around it. And even in the moments when you feel nothing shifting, the spiritual world is already at work on your behalf. This is the rhythm of unseen grace. God cleanses long before you understand the cleansing. In psychology, Carl Rogers once wrote that what is most personal is most universal. A reminder that the emotional weight you carry is not a burden meant to isolate you. Your healing contributes to the healing of the collective soul. And in sacred music, the Gregorian chant, Asperges me, Domine, has echoed for centuries with the same message. Cleanse me, O Lord. When the frog arrives, it is as if that ancient hymn is being sung through nature itself. There is another spiritual layer many forget. Frogs are attracted not only to water, but to vibration. They sense subtle shifts in the environment, changes in frequency, movement, and atmospheric pressure. Spiritually, when a frog comes near your home, it signals that your vibration has changed. Something in your energy field has risen, elevated, or opened. You have quietly stepped out of an old emotional frequency, and the frog appears as a witness to that shift. And maybe the question begins to echo inside you. If the vibration around me is changing, what new chapter is preparing to emerge? In physics, resonance occurs when the frequency of one object causes another object to vibrate in harmony. When your spirit begins to resonate at a higher frequency through letting go, through healing, through forgiveness, through awakening, the environment around you responds. Creatures come, signs appear, movement begins. In this sense, the frog is not random, it is resonance. This is also why frogs often emerge after rain. Rain cleanses the earth the same way emotional release cleanses the soul. And just as the earth breathes differently after a storm, so does your spirit. Ezekiel 36:26 declares, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. And sometimes this renewal arrives first as a shift in vibration before it becomes a shift in circumstances. The frog, therefore, arrives as a spiritual interruption, an undeniable sign that heaven refuses to let you carry what has been weighing your soul. It doesn't hide behind the shadows like the lizard. It doesn't watch silently. It announces itself. It leaps into visibility. It brings your internal renewal into the physical world, just so you cannot ignore what is happening inside you anymore. And perhaps you feel another question rising softly within. If healing is already underway, what would my life look like if I finally allowed myself to embrace it? This moment is sacred because the frog does not come to frighten, it comes to confirm. To assure you that God has already begun the cleansing you prayed for, even if you didn't have the language to ask for it. Revelation 21:5 whispers the same truth. Behold, I am making all things new. And sometimes new begins with water, internal, emotional, spiritual water. So, when the frog appears, pay attention to the deeper message being delivered to your spirit. Your internal landscape is changing, cleansing, softening, transforming. Your vibration has risen. Your emotional world has shifted. And the universe is responding to that shift in the language of symbols, creatures, and signs. Let your heart settle now, chosen one, into the peace of this truth. Healing is not coming, it has already begun, and you are standing in the quiet beginning of your own renewal. When the frequency around you begins to rise, chosen one, something profound is happening beneath the surface, something your spirit recognizes long before your mind catches up. This rising frequency is not random. It is cleansing, it is detoxing, it is heaven rearranging the spiritual atmosphere around you. It means your soul is no longer tolerating what once kept you stuck, and the things you accepted in old seasons can no longer survive in the vibration you are stepping into now. And maybe the question begins to echo inside you. If the vibration around me is changing, what new chapter is preparing to emerge? In physics, resonance occurs when the frequency of one object causes another object to vibrate in harmony. When your spirit begins to resonate at a higher frequency through letting go, through healing, through forgiveness, through awakening, the environment around you responds. Creatures come, signs appear, movement begins. There is a tenderness in this moment, as if God Himself is reaching into the places you never had the courage to touch. This is why, in many ancestral traditions across continents, African, Celtic, Indigenous, Australian, The frog was central to rituals of rebirth. It symbolized the threshold where the pain of yesterday cannot follow you into tomorrow, where old wounds are washed away before a new season is allowed to begin. And maybe, somewhere inside you, a quiet question arises. What old weight have I been carrying into rooms meant for my future self? Such a question is not fear, it is awakening. So, if a frog has visited your home, understand something sacred. You are crossing a spiritual bridge. You may feel alone, uncertain, emotionally stretched, but the truth is that you are being cleansed for the life waiting ahead. Lamentations 3:22-23 whispers that God's mercies are new every morning, and the frog arrives when those new mercies are already in motion, renewing you from the inside out. Here is the part most people never realize. Cleansing always precedes revelation. The frog doesn't just clean, it prepares. Because once the emotional fog lifts, something hidden becomes visible, something you were never meant to overlook. Cleansing clears the lens, healing sharpens the sight. And the moment that inner water settles, another spiritual creature enters the story with a different assignment altogether: the owl. The owl does not come to heal your heart, it opens your eyes. The owl appears when the unseen realm is moving, when spiritual currents are shifting, when heaven is quietly rearranging the board. It comes when truth is preparing to rise like a stone breaking through the surface of water. The owl is never a messenger of fear, it is a messenger of revelation, a revealer, a discerner, a silent breaker of illusions. Owls see what others cannot. They hunt in the dark. They perceive movement so small the human eye completely misses it. Their hearing is so sensitive they can detect the heartbeat of their prey beneath leaves. This is why, spiritually, an owl near your house means something hidden is about to be exposed. A truth buried beneath someone's performance, a lie covered in charm, a mask worn too long, a betrayal dressed as loyalty, a secret held together by silence but no longer sustainable. Sometimes the owl appears during seasons when you sense that something is off, even if you cannot explain it. You feel it in your spirit, in your dreams, in your intuition, a quiet dissonance, a subtle disturbance, a mismatch between someone's words and their energy. And perhaps another question rises inside you. Why do I sense truth before it reveals itself? That sensitivity is not coincidence, it is calling. It is part of the architecture God placed in your spirit. When the owl arrives, it confirms you are not imagining anything. Your intuition is not paranoia, it is prophecy in its early form. Soon, facts will match the feeling. Luke 12:2 says, "Nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed," and the owl becomes heaven's announcement that this unveiling is already unfolding. In many sacred traditions, the Hopi, the Maori, the Druids, the owl was called the guardian of truth, not the soft truth, the transformative truth, the kind that burns away delusion, exposes deception, and frees the chosen ones from illusions meant to derail them. The owl shows up when you are about to see behind the curtain, when God is about to remove someone's disguise, when manipulation is being dismantled from the spiritual realm first, before it collapses in the natural. This is why light always follows the owl. Its appearance is like a herald whispering, "Pay attention, revelation is near." And perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of all is this: the owl never appears where lies can survive. When it comes near a house perching on a roof, calling through the night, watching from a tree, it means something spiritual has shifted in that environment. Darkness is losing its power. Hidden intentions are being dragged into the light. What was whispered in secret is about to echo in truth. The shadows no longer have a place to hide. Some people fear the owl, but spiritually, only those who live in deception should tremble at its presence. To the chosen ones, the owl is a powerful ally. It means your discernment is being sharpened. Your spiritual vision is clearing. Your soul is stepping into a higher altitude of awareness. Words will no longer deceive you. Appearances will no longer distract you. Manipulation will no longer blind you. Ephesians 5:13 says that everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and the owl's arrival is a living symbol of that scripture. Owls also possess the extraordinary ability to rotate their heads almost completely around. Spiritually, this symbolizes expanded vision, past, present, and patterns you were once too wounded to see. You're about to understand why something happened, who was real, who was false, who drained you, and who was sent to elevate you. And as that clarity approaches, a final question may rise softly within. Am I ready to see the truth I prayed for, even if it changes everything? Rest now, chosen one. The cleansing has begun, the revelation is approaching, and your path is being illuminated step by sacred step. When the owl comes, chosen one, confusion begins to lift. The fog that blurred your intuition dissolves. Revelation takes the place of doubt. The arrival of the owl is not always a sign that someone is lying to you. Sometimes it is a sign that you are awakening. Your spirit is leveling up. Your inner sight is sharpening. You are beginning to see beyond the physical world and into the spiritual one, perceiving layers others cannot name, much less understand. It is the moment described in Daniel 2:22, where God reveals deep and hidden things. And suddenly, what once felt like intuition becomes a voice that refuses to be silenced. So, if an owl has shown itself near your home, prepare yourself. You are about to witness something that will shift your understanding of a person, a situation, or even your own destiny. Truth is coming, and truth does not ask permission. Truth arrives like sunrise breaking into a locked room. John 8:32 says, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." But what most people forget is that this freedom often begins in disruption. Revelation requires the courage to see. Once the truth is revealed, the next visitor arrives not to warn, not to cleanse, but to drag to the surface the one thing people run from, their shadows, the parts of themselves they hide behind smiles, the wounds they refuse to acknowledge, the pain covered by achievement, distraction, or spiritual language. If the owl exposes what is hidden around you, the cockroach exposes what is hidden inside you. It is the most misunderstood spiritual messenger because it does not arrive beautifully. It arrives uncomfortably. And spiritually, that is the entire point. Cockroaches symbolize what the soul has been avoiding: emotional dirt, suppressed memories, unresolved wounds, spiritual clutter. They appear when something you tried to bury is demanding to be faced. Think about where cockroaches thrive: in dark corners, hidden crevices, places no one wants to touch. Spiritually, those are the same places where people bury their pain. I'm fine. It doesn't matter. I already moved on. But the universe sees what you press down. The heart remembers what the mind tried to erase. Psalm 44:21 says that God knows the secrets of the heart, and sometimes the only way for healing to begin is for what was hidden to crawl into the light. So, when healing is overdue, the cockroach arrives as a messenger of confrontation. Its presence is not just physical, it is symbolic, a reminder that running from your shadow does not dissolve it. Every demon ignored grows stronger, every emotion buried becomes poison, every truth avoided becomes a trap. And sometimes the soul itself cries, "Enough." Perhaps quietly a question arises inside you. What part of me have I been too afraid to look at? Such questions are not a weakness, they are the beginning of transformation. That is why cockroaches appear suddenly. You don't expect them, you don't want them, you can't control where they show up. Spiritually, the message is the same. You cannot control when unresolved pain resurfaces. You cannot schedule the moment your heart decides to break. You cannot micromanage healing. Psalm 34:18 reminds you that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, but closeness often begins when the brokenness refuses to stay hidden. Many chosen ones carry emotional battles in silence. They are strong for everyone. They hold themselves together so others don't worry. But when the spirit is suffocating under the weight of unspoken wounds, the cockroach becomes heaven's intervention. It forces acknowledgement, where you once forced suppression. It brings your shadow to the surface so your healing can finally begin. Cockroaches survive anything: fire, poison, destruction. They are nearly impossible to kill. Spiritually, this represents the wounds inside you that remain alive because you never fully faced them. A memory you've avoided, a fear you've ignored, a past version of yourself you've refused to forgive. Proverbs 20:27 calls the human spirit the lamp of the Lord that searches the innermost parts, and the cockroach shows up when that inner lamp is being turned on. And so, it asks the question your soul has been terrified to whisper: what am I avoiding? It does not come to embarrass you, it comes to break the cycle, to expose the emotional rot before it spreads, to make you clean the places where you insisted you were fine. Its presence is uncomfortable but necessary, because sometimes heaven will not allow you to move into your destiny while something inside you is still poisoning your spirit. If cockroaches appear frequently, especially in the same room, pay attention. That space is symbolically holding emotional residue, a room filled with old memories, a place where you cried, a space where arguments happened, a corner where heaviness sat for months. The physical manifestation reveals the spiritual one, and once faced, the infestation ends, because healing chased away is healing delayed. Healing embraced is healing completed. The cockroach may be the messenger of discomfort, but after discomfort comes breakthrough. Romans 8:28 reminds you that God works all things together for good, and sometimes good begins with what makes you uncomfortable, because once the shadows are exposed, something extraordinary happens. The spiritual world does not just speak, it acts, and the next animal does not appear to warn, cleanse, or reveal. It appears to protect your destiny itself. When that creature enters your space, it is a sign that the spiritual realm is already working in your favor, orchestrating breakthroughs long before you see their shape. Each of these animals carries a message. But here is the revelation most people never learn. They only appear for those spiritually awake enough to notice. The universe does not waste signs. Heaven does not send messages to closed eyes. When animals cross the border between nature and your home, it is because something inside you has awakened. Your inner perception, your spiritual antenna, your energetic sensitivity has risen to a level where guidance arrives not through words, but through symbols. Why animals? Because animals do not lie, they do not pretend, they do not mask intention, they respond to energy, vibration, and frequency. Their instincts move them toward places where spiritual activity is shifting. When one enters your home, it is not entering your walls, it is entering your atmosphere, your spirit, your energetic field. Perhaps, quietly, another question stirs within you. Why is the spiritual realm choosing this moment to speak so clearly? Because you, chosen one, are awakening. And awakening always draws revelation. And that means, chosen one, a message is being delivered directly to your soul with a precision far more delicate than anything the physical world understands. The world believes the universe speaks loudly, boldly, dramatically, but those awakened in spirit know the deeper truth. Heaven rarely shouts. It whispers. It breathes through patterns. It speaks through symbols. It hides messages in the places only the spiritually sensitive will notice. Humans ignore what is subtle because they are trained to see with their eyes. Animals do not. They are trained to see with instinct. And instinct, spiritually speaking, is one of the oldest languages of heaven. The same instinct that responds to prayer, to protection, to spiritual cleansing, to danger, to transitions you haven't acknowledged yet, but your soul already has. When your life enters a phase of transition, your home begins reflecting it before you do. The atmosphere thickens or softens, your dreams shift, your emotions surface, and creatures cross the threshold into your personal space, because something within you has changed. In a way, your home becomes an altar, a physical mirror of your internal world. The ancient Christian mystic Meister Eckhart once wrote, The outer work can never be small if the inner work is great. And spiritually, creatures appear when your inner work is being stirred by God Himself. So how do you interpret these signs? How do you read the quiet language the spiritual realm uses to guide your steps? First, observe what was happening in your life on the exact day the creature appeared. Were you exhausted to the point your bones felt heavy? Were you overwhelmed by decisions that stretched your faith? Were you closing a chapter you didn't want to close, or stepping into a beginning you weren't ready to name? Heaven does nothing out of rhythm. Animals come with timing. They appear when your emotional, spiritual, or energetic condition creates an opening for revelation. Proverbs 20:12 says, "The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord has made them both." Meaning, your inner senses are created to interpret these moments. Perhaps the question rises in you, what was stirring in my soul at the very moment this sign appeared? Because timing is often the first layer of truth. Second, pay attention to the emotional atmosphere inside you. Were you feeling anxious, drained, strangely peaceful, sad without reason? Emotion is spiritual data, the soft pressure heaven uses to pull your attention inward. Sometimes the message is not about what is happening around you, but what is happening inside, a cleansing underway, a truth rising, a danger approaching, or a release unfolding. The universe warns you when someone is lying. It comforts you when you're breaking. It cleanses you when you're holding on to what must leave. It reveals when clarity is coming. And in those moments, perhaps another question whispers inside you. What emotion was God using to speak before the sign arrived? Third, write it down. People forget signs because they trust memory more than intuition. But memory is shaped by logic, and intuition is shaped by spirit. When you document the pattern, the day, the time, the emotion, the animal, the conversation you had, the dream you experienced, the thought that lingered, something extraordinary begins to happen. The messages align, the connections form. What looked random reveals a pattern. What feels accidental becomes guidance. And suddenly you see the hand of God woven through details you once overlooked. Habakkuk 2:2 says, "Write the vision, make it plain, because writing crystallizes revelation." You begin realizing nothing was random, everything was communication. Here is the rule of the spiritual realm. The sign arrives when your soul is ready for it, not before, not after. Heaven never wastes revelation. John 14:26 reminds us that the Spirit brings all things to remembrance, meaning your spirit receives signs precisely when you can interpret them. The bat comes when a cycle ends. The lizard appears when protection is being activated. The frog arrives when cleansing has begun. The owl shows up when truth is rising from the shadows. The cockroach surfaces when healing can no longer be delayed. And behind all of this, a deeper principle reveals itself. Your awakening is accelerating. You are transitioning into a higher level of perception, a new spiritual altitude where silence becomes instruction, instinct becomes confirmation, and creation itself becomes a prophetic language. This is why animals enter your home when logic insists they shouldn't. They are responding to frequency. They feel what humans overlook. In neuroscience, there is a term called liminal sensitivity, referring to the ability to detect changes in the environment too subtle for conscious recognition. Spiritually, you are entering this heightened sensitivity, the liminal zone between the natural and the divine. In classical art, the painter Wassily Kandinsky believed that everything begins with a pulse, and spiritually this is true. Signs arrive because your spiritual pulse has changed. Your vibration is rising. Your old identity is dissolving. Your emotional field is shifting, and heaven responds to those shifts through symbols. Creation reacts to your awakening, like strings of a violin reacting to a nearby tuning fork. They tremble when tuned to the same frequency. This is why Romans 8:19 says, "Creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." The moment revelation rises within you, the natural world responds. Animals enter your atmosphere, not because your home was chosen, but because you were. And so one final question lingers, gentle and profound. If heaven is speaking this clearly, what sacred truth am I being prepared to receive? Chosen one, signs do not come to confuse you, they come to guide you. They come to awaken you, they come to prepare you. And they come because your spirit is finally ready for what your destiny is about to reveal. Rest in this revelation. The language of heaven has opened to you, and you are hearing it. Some will say it's just nature. They will roll their eyes at signs they were never spiritually equipped to interpret. They will mock what they cannot understand, dismiss what they cannot perceive, and deny what they cannot feel. But you, chosen one, do not look with your eyes, you look with the Spirit. You see with the part of you God awakened through storm, loss, silence, prayer, and the long nights when your soul learned to listen in the dark. And once you begin recognizing these signs, something subtle but extraordinary begins to shift in your life. Your movements change. You stop forcing what is breaking. You stop trusting what feels wrong. You stop explaining away what your soul already knows. You begin acting from alignment, not from fear. You begin discerning with clarity, not confusion. And your spirit starts leading your steps in places your logic wasn't brave enough to step into. This is the sacred moment when your inner compass becomes more powerful than your circumstances. Because the universe does not send warnings to scare you. Heaven does not send signs to confuse you. The spiritual realm does not speak in riddles to torment you. Warnings arrive to save you. Messages arrive to guide you. Symbols arrive to align you with the path written for you before you were even born. Isaiah 30:21 says, "Whether you turn to the right or to the left, you will hear a voice behind you saying, 'This is the way, walk in it.'" And creatures become that whisper when your heart grows quiet enough to hear. The moment you start paying attention, you unlock something powerful. Spiritual partnership. You are no longer walking alone, you are being accompanied, you are being shown, you are being led. In seasons when you felt isolated, signs surrounded you quietly, like divine footprints on the edge of your path. You didn't imagine them, you didn't misread them, you didn't over-spiritualize, you awakened. In psychology, Carl Jung wrote that synchronicity is the language of the soul. What you are experiencing is not coincidence, it is conversation. Your inner world is being spoken to in ways the external world cannot interpret. And in ancient art, such as the illuminated manuscripts of Hildegard of Bingen, creation itself was depicted as a living instrument heaven uses to communicate with the chosen. You are not delusional for noticing the signs. You are spiritually literate. There comes a point when you begin trusting these signals more than the mask someone wears, more than the smile someone forces, more than the promises someone breaks. You begin trusting the way your stomach tightens, the way your chest softens, the way your dreams shift, the way your peace disappears around certain people. And maybe, quietly, a question rises inside you. Why does my spirit recognize danger long before my mind does? That sensitivity is not a flaw, it is a gift developed through survival, prayer, heartbreak, and God's shaping hand. The universe does not confuse the chosen, it clarifies. And every creature that enters your space, bat, lizard, frog, owl, cockroach, carries a message aligned with your spiritual condition. You are being shown when to stop, when to release, when to protect yourself, when to awaken, when to face what you've avoided, and now when to follow the path God is illuminating. Because signs do not come only to warn, they come to escort you into a higher dimension of awareness. Psalm 25:9 says, "He guides the humble in what is right and teaches them his way." And humility, spiritually, is not weakness. It is the willingness to listen, the willingness to admit you don't know everything, the willingness to pay attention when heaven speaks in symbols instead of words. Once you begin recognizing these signs, your life becomes anchored in discernment. You stop begging for clarity the moment confusion arrives. You stop trying to convince your spirit to tolerate what God is removing. You stop analyzing spiritual messages as if they were mere coincidences. Suddenly, you begin to live with a kind of quiet authority, a holy certainty that your path is not accidental. You begin to understand that timing, symbols, signs, and creatures are not random, they are coordinates. And as this awareness grows, your heart softens into a deeper truth. You were never meant to navigate destiny alone. Psalm 121:8 declares, "The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore." This guidance may not always arrive with thunder and revelation. Often it arrives as a tiny creature stepping across your threshold, but its message is no less divine. Because once you allow these signs to shape your perception, something sacred unlocks, alignment between your soul and the path written for you. You begin walking with heaven instead of fighting against it. You begin discerning with spiritual eyes instead of leaning on earthly logic. The prophet Rumi once said, "What you seek is seeking you." And spiritually, this becomes literal. The signs you notice are the signs sent to you because your spirit is tuned to receive them. And here is the profound shift that happens inside you. You no longer fear what's leaving. You no longer panic when something ends. You no longer cling to situations that drain you or people who confuse you, because you finally understand that warnings are protection, revelations are mercy, and guidance is love. And maybe, in a quiet moment, another question surfaces in your heart. If I am being guided this clearly, what destiny am I being prepared for? Chosen one, you are not walking blindly. You are being led step by sacred step. The signs have been around you all along, not to scare you, but to partner with you. Not to confuse you, but to align you. Not to overwhelm you, but to remind you that heaven is actively participating in your journey. You are spiritually accompanied, you are guided, you are protected, and the path ahead is opening. Allow this truth to settle into your chest like a soft light. Your spirit is remembering its language, your destiny is responding, and you, chosen one, are more supported than you have ever realized. And now that you understand the meaning, chosen one, you are ready for the final and most important revelation. What happens when you respond to the signs? And what happens when you ignore them? This is the point where your spiritual journey stops being theory and becomes transformation. Because once you recognize the language of heaven, you cannot go back to blindness without paying a price. Now you understand nothing in the spiritual world is random. Nothing drifts into your life without intention. Proverbs 16:9 says, "A person may plan their path, but the Lord directs their steps." And sometimes those steps are directed through creatures that carry messages no human voice could deliver. Every sign has a purpose. Every appearance has a meaning. Every creature that crossed your doorway carried a message the universe wanted you to hear. The bat was transformed, showing you the cycle that had ended long before you admitted it. The lizard was protected, standing guard when something unseen approached your energy. The frog was cleansing, washing away emotional residue you didn't realize you were still holding. The owl was a revelation, bringing truth into your life with the precision only spiritual light can bear. The cockroach was confrontation, forcing you to face the shadows you kept hiding from yourself. None of them came by accident. None of them were random. They appeared because your spirit is waking up. You are beginning to see the invisible world the way chosen ones have always been meant to see it. And perhaps quietly, without you realizing it, another question is rising in your chest. Now that I recognize these signs, what responsibility rests on my spirit? This is where the deepest truth enters. Your response determines your destiny. When you respond to the signs, something extraordinary happens. Your life becomes aligned with divine timing. Opportunities open, relationships purify, patterns break, cycles end gracefully. You stop walking in circles, you stop repeating wounds, you stop attracting what is meant to destroy you. You begin to move with the flow of heaven instead of fighting against it. And this alignment, this partnership, this spiritual coherence, it reshapes your path. Jesus said in Matthew 13:16, "Blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear." Seeing is a blessing, hearing is a blessing, responding is destiny. Because when you respond correctly, revelation becomes direction, direction becomes protection, and protection becomes elevation. Responding to the bat means letting go of what your ego wanted to keep. Responding to the lizard means trusting that God sees threats you cannot. Responding to the frog means releasing what your heart can't carry. Responding to the owl means accepting a truth that might hurt before it frees you. Responding to the cockroach means acknowledging the wound before it poisons your future. When you respond, healing accelerates, protection strengthens, vision expands, and the next chapter unlocks. But what happens when you ignore the signs? Life becomes heavier, cycles repeat, patterns return, relationships deteriorate, stress multiplies. And the universe begins increasing the intensity of the signs, not to punish you, but to break through the noise around your heart. Ignoring signs is like ignoring a wound. It never disappears, it simply deepens. Psalm 32:9 warns not to be like a horse that must be controlled by bit and bridle, meaning that ignoring guidance forces heaven to guide you with pressure instead of whispers. Ignoring the bat means dragging dead cycles into living seasons. Ignoring the lizard means leaving spiritual doors open for harm. Ignoring the frog means stacking emotional debris inside the soul. Ignoring the owl means walking blindly into deception. Ignoring the cockroach means letting the wound rot instead of heal. The spiritual world loves you too much to stay silent when you're walking toward harm. Ignoring signs never erases them, it only delays transformation, and delay always comes with a cost. But here is the deeper revelation, the one most never reach. The signs chose you because your spirit is capable of interpreting them. Not everyone has that gift. Not everyone has that sensitivity. Not everyone has that calling. You were chosen to receive messages others overlook because your spirit has been trained through pain, shaped through silence, sharpened through storms, and now heaven trusts you with clarity. Years ago, the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote, "Life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward." Spiritually, the signs allow you to understand forward before life forces you to. They give you a glimpse into God's architecture before you step into the structure. And one day, when you look back on this season, you will realize the signs were not random moments. They were pieces of a puzzle the spiritual realm was aligning for you step by step. In sacred music, like Avo Pat Spiegel, I am Spiegel, a single note repeats, building layer upon layer until clarity emerges from simplicity. That is how signs work. One creature, one moment, one atmosphere shift, and suddenly your entire perspective rearranges. You stop moving blindly. You stop fearing the unknown. You stop doubting what you feel. You stop believing the world over your spirit. You begin to walk with a holy confidence, a prophetic awareness, a spiritual maturity that grows like fire inside your chest. Ignoring signs is like ignoring a wound. It never disappears, it simply deepens. Psalm 32:9 warns not to be like a horse that must be controlled by bit and bridle, meaning that ignoring guidance forces heaven to guide you with pressure instead of whispers. Ignoring the bat means dragging dead cycles into living seasons. Ignoring the lizard means leaving spiritual doors open for harm. Ignoring the frog means stacking emotional debris inside the soul. This is where your awakening becomes your assignment. This is where your awareness becomes your authority. This is where your discernment becomes your protection. This is where you stop doubting yourself and start trusting heaven. You are not confused, you are being guided. You are not imagining, you are being instructed. You are not alone, you are being led by the unseen hand of God. And now, You are ready for what comes next. And maybe one final question rises gently within you. If heaven is sending me this many signs, what destiny is God preparing me for? Chosen one, now comes the deepest truth of all. You are no longer just noticing signs, you are being prepared for the next dimension of your calling. The spiritual world is not just speaking to you. It is partnering with you, guiding you, leading you, and shaping you for a destiny your old self could not have carried. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why the moment you finally broke in silence, something moved in your environment? Why did a creature cross your doorway on the same night your spirit whispered, "God, show me anything"? What if that timing was not coincidence at all, but choreography? What if heaven arranged that moment with the precision of a divine symphony, placing that creature exactly where your breaking heart would notice it? And what if your pain itself summoned the response, the way a tuning string summons another into vibration? Perhaps your tears were not signs of weakness at all, but signals that activated the unseen on your behalf. Maybe it was a whisper from heaven, a signal from the universe, a coded message sent directly into the atmosphere you were sitting in, saying, "You are not unseen, you are not unheard, you are being guided." And perhaps the most sacred part of this revelation is this: from this moment on, you will never walk blind again. Because once heaven speaks to you in symbols, your soul begins to interpret what your eyes once ignored. Suddenly, every shift in the room feels intentional, every silence feels meaningful, and every unexpected creature becomes a spiritual echo of something greater. And in that awareness, you begin to sense that God has been closer than you ever dared to believe. Because blindness was never your destiny, discernment was. Jeremiah 33:3 declares, "Call unto me, and I will answer you, and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know." What if these creatures were God answering you in a language older than words? A language the spirit understands long before the mind catches up. Perhaps this is the same language the prophets once recognized in the wilderness, the same language creation used before written scripture even existed. And maybe the reason it speaks so deeply to you is because your soul remembers this language, even if your mind does not. For centuries, mystics taught that the universe speaks through symbols long before it speaks through sentences. Saint Teresa of Avila once wrote that the soul perceives God more clearly in gentle signs than in thunder. And you, chosen one, have reached the spiritual maturity where heaven no longer needs a storm to get your attention. A whisper is enough. You have walked through enough storms to know their sound by heart. Now God trusts you with subtlety. That is a mark of spiritual advancement. It means heaven no longer needs to shake your world to reach you. Your sensitivity has become the gateway. You thought you were alone in your room when you cried that last hidden tear, but the spiritual realm was listening. You believed no one knew how exhausted you were, but heaven knew. Your prayer didn't fall into emptiness, it activated something in the unseen. Perhaps now the quiet question rising in you is, how many signs did God send before I finally learned how to see them? How many times did your room shift before you realized it wasn't just the wind? How many nights did a creature appear at the doorway of your pain, waiting for you to understand that you were never abandoned? Perhaps heaven has been patient with your awakening long before you caught the first clue. This is the turning point where your perception becomes your protection. This is the moment when what you once called coincidence becomes confirmation. This is where the spiritual and physical finally meet. This is where your inner knowing becomes louder than external noise. And this is where you begin trusting the movement you feel, not just the evidence you see. In physics, resonance happens when two vibrating frequencies match. Spiritually, signs appear when your internal frequency begins aligning with your destiny. That is why animals respond. They feel the shift before you do. They sense the elevation in your spiritual atmosphere. They move toward awakening the same way a tuning fork vibrates when it finds its matching pitch. You are being called into alignment, and creation itself is responding. And perhaps this is why certain creatures appeared only in specific seasons, your vibration changed, and nature answered accordingly, like two invisible strings vibrating in harmony across dimensions. And maybe now, deep inside you, a second question rises. Why did God choose to speak to me this way? Why not through people? Because people lie, people doubt, people dismiss. But animals do not. They don't pretend, they don't manipulate energy, they don't mask their instincts. They respond to truth the way light responds to darkness, instantly. That is why you were sent signs that could not deceive you. Humans may try to distort your reality, but creation reflects it accurately. That is why heaven chose messengers who cannot be corrupted by ego or agenda. They are pure energy responding to pure truth. The bat came to end your old season. The lizard came to guard your vulnerable places. The frog came to cleanse what your strength could not. The owl came to reveal what your intuition already suspected. The cockroach came to confront the pain you buried. Each one was a scripture-made visible creation, speaking where words could not reach. Romans 8:19 says, "Creation waits eagerly for the children of God to be revealed." Creation responds to you because it recognizes something in you that the world overlooked. You may not feel extraordinary, but the realm of spirit sees the light on you that others pretend not to notice. And it is that light, not your pain, not your wounds, that attracts revelation. And perhaps now, a third question rises quietly but powerfully. What happens to my life if I start responding to these signs instead of ignoring them? Your path shifts, your discernment sharpens, your relationships purify. The wrong people fall away with unnatural speed. Opportunities align. Doors that were forced finally closed. Doors that were blocked finally open. You begin acting from intuition instead of insecurity, wisdom instead of fear, alignment instead of survival. And maybe for the first time, you begin walking like someone who knows they are supported instead of someone who hopes they are. In this awakening, you begin to understand why the universe whispered instead of shouting, because shouting would have awakened your fear. Whispering awakened your spirit. And now that your spirit is awake, the guidance becomes clearer. Psalm 119 to 105 says, "Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." Lamps do not blind, they guide softly. That is the energy of these signs. They don't overwhelm, they align. They don't pressure, they prepare. They don't chase you, they accompany you. Maybe what showed up in your home was not a creature interrupting your day, but a creature illuminating your destiny. Maybe it entered not to frighten you, but to synchronize you with the next chapter God has been preparing for you behind the veil. And maybe your spirit already sensed something was shifting, long before you admitted it to yourself. These signs simply revealed what your soul already knew. And here is something sacred. The moment you begin interpreting the signs, heaven begins sending more. Not because you are special in the eyes of people, but because you are chosen in the eyes of God. And chosen ones receive instruction that others overlook. In classical paintings like Titian's Annunciation, angels are shown entering ordinary rooms, kitchens, bedrooms, small, humble spaces to deliver divine messages. That is symbolic of a spiritual truth. God does not always speak on mountains. Sometimes He speaks in your home, in your routines, in your quiet moments. And animals become the messengers when your spirit has grown sensitive enough to perceive what the physical world ignores. Your everyday spaces become sacred ground. From this moment forward, you will not walk into a room the same way. You will not overlook the quiet movements around you. You will not dismiss sudden appearances, because your eyes have opened. And once the eye of the Spirit opens, it never closes again. Awakening is irreversible. Discernment is irreversible. Clarity is irreversible. And your spiritual sight will only sharpen from here. And now, chosen one, your life is stepping into a new dimension, one where you can no longer pretend not to know what your spirit already sees, one where God's whispers are louder than human opinions. One where every sign becomes a stepping stone toward the destiny you were born to walk into. One where your spirit leads your steps with confidence instead of doubt. You are not unseen. You are not unheard. You are guided. And you will never walk blind again. Let that truth settle in your spirit like a soft, holy wind. Let peace find the parts of you that once feared the unknown. Let clarity rise where confusion used to live. Because the signs were never random. They were always for you. They were, in truth, heaven speaking your name. Chosen one, as we come to the end of this message, I want you to sit with one sacred truth. You were never walking through life unaware. You were only waiting for your spirit to awaken. And now that it has, the world around you will never look the same again. The signs you used to overlook have become instructions. The creatures you once feared have become teachers. The moments you once ignored are now revelations. And as this awakening settles into your spirit, you may begin to recognize that every moment of confusion, every silent night, every emotional storm was preparing your inner eye to see with divine clarity. Sometimes God hides understanding not to punish you, but to prepare you. And when the preparation is complete, revelation becomes effortless. Every appearance carried a message. Every encounter carried intention. And every symbol carried guidance your soul was finally mature enough to receive. You were not imagining it. You were not exaggerating. You were being prepared. Prepared for transformation, protected through spiritual turbulence, cleansed from emotional residue, awakened to hidden truth, and guided into confrontation that leads to healing. And when you look back, you may realize that these signs showed up at the exact moments you were emotionally vulnerable. A reminder that heaven often speaks the loudest when your heart is the most open. Sometimes divine timing looks like interruption. Sometimes it looks like a coincidence. But in reality, it is orchestration. Take a breath. Feel what has shifted inside you. Feel how your spirit no longer moves with confusion but with clarity. Feel how the fear that once clouded your intuition has been replaced with discernment. The signs were not sent to scare you. They were sent to align you with the path heaven wrote long before the world tried to distract you from it. This is how destiny speaks, not through chaos, but through precision. Not through noise, but through alignment. And the more you honor these signs, the more the spiritual realm honors your sensitivity by sending you greater understanding. And now, chosen one, as you leave this message, you are not leaving empty-handed. You walk away with deeper sight. You walk away with spiritual certainty. You walk away knowing you are seen, guided, and divinely accompanied. And maybe, for the first time in your life, you finally understand why the universe whispered instead of shouted, because your soul was ready to hear. You were ready to interpret. You were ready to evolve. The guidance that once felt subtle now feels unmistakable, because the inner noise that once blocked clarity has finally quieted. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, if it confirmed what your intuition has been feeling, if it helped you understand the timing of what has been happening in your life, I invite you to like this video, not for the algorithm, but as a gesture that you are awakening to your spiritual language. Share it with someone who may be walking through their own transition. Leave a comment and tell us which sign has appeared in your life, or what your spirit has been discerning. This channel is not just a place for messages. It is a gathering of souls who see deeper, feel deeper, and walk with purpose. When you comment, you create a ripple of connection that reaches someone who needs your voice. When you share, you become part of someone else's awakening. This community is a spiritual home for those who have always felt different, sensitive, aware, and deeply connected to the unseen. And if you haven't yet, I would be honored if you subscribe and become part of this spiritual journey. Every video here is crafted to guide you through the unseen world with clarity, reverence, and truth. To those who support with super thanks or any form of generosity, I see you, and I thank you from the center of my heart. And to those who simply show up, listen, and grow, Your presence is a blessing in itself. Support is not measured by money or gifts. It is measured by the openness of your heart and the willingness to walk deeper into spiritual understanding. Before we close, let me speak this blessing over your life. May your spiritual eyes remain open. May your intuition stay sharp. May every sign sent to you be understood with clarity. May protection surround your home, your mind, your spirit. May every creature that crosses your path bring guidance, not fear. May revelation rise in you like dawn breaking the longest night. May peace settle into the corners of your soul where worry once lived. And may your next chapter unfold with direction, purpose, and divine alignment. You are chosen, you are protected, you are guided, and your destiny is already moving. Go in peace, chosen one. Until the next message, stay awake, stay aligned, and stay blessed.